My name is Caleb Monroe, and I hit the hardwood floor in front of my entire family on Christmas Eve. Not slipped, not lost my balance. I was shoved. Gravy burst across my shirt as my hip slammed down, pain tearing through me so fast it stole the air from my lungs. The chair scraped backward with a sound that cut deeper than the fall. Wood dragged against wood, like something being ripped out of place. Logan Pierce stood over me, 34, thick neck, broad shoulders, the kind of half-smile men wear when they finally get permission to be cruel. "That seat belongs to my dad," he said. Then, louder, so no one could pretend they didn't hear. "Get out!" For a moment, the room froze. Christmas lights blinked in the bay window. Forks hovered midair. Someone's kid whispered, "Mom," like they were watching something they weren't supposed to see. I looked up at Logan, then past him, at my wife, Janine. I waited for her to say my name, not to yell, not to fight, just my name. Like it meant something. She didn't. She grabbed napkins, not for me, for the floor. She knelt and started blotting gravy off the hardwood, like the spill was the real emergency, like the man on the floor with a wrecked hip and a burning face was just clutter. That was the moment something inside me shut down. Not anger. Anger still wants resolution. This was colder, cleaner, final. I pushed myself up with one hand. The floor felt like ice under my palm. My dignity burned hotter than my bruised hip. Logan stepped back, satisfied, like he'd checked something off a list. Behind him stood Derek Pierce, coat still on, arms crossed, smirking like this was a show he'd paid to see. Nobody told Logan to apologize. Nobody told Derek to leave. Nobody asked if I was hurt. I was invisible. I stood slowly, every one of my 58 years screaming at once. Gravy soaked into my shirt. My hip throbbed like a warning light. I looked at Janine one last time. She still wouldn't look at me, so I walked out. No scene, no words. The Dubuque cold slapped my face awake. My truck door closed with a hollow thud that sounded permanent. I sat there, gripping the steering wheel, like it was the only thing holding me together. Through the window, I could still see them moving around the table. Someone laughed, too loud, like laughter could erase what had just happened. I started the engine and backed out without looking back. At Casey's, I sat alone with burnt coffee and watched my breath fog the glass. My phone buzzed. Janine. I didn't answer. Then Logan. Then Janine again. I drove home. My home. The small ranch house I'd owned long before her. Quiet. Unimpressed. Honest. In the hallway, I passed the thin folder where I kept my papers. Deed. Insurance. Receipts from the kitchen remodel I'd paid for at her place. Tile I'd laid after work. Hands cramping. Back screaming. Proof. I changed my shirt and sat in the dark with an ice pack on my hip when my phone buzzed again. A credit alert. Change detected. My stomach dropped. That kind of alert doesn't happen by accident. It happens when someone touches your name. And the only people who had access to mine were still sitting around that Christmas table, pretending nothing was wrong. I didn't grow up believing a man deserved a seat at the head of the table. I grew up believing a man earned it. My father, Harold Monroe, never said much about respect. He didn't have to. He lived it. He woke up before dawn every weekday for 37 years, packed his lunch in a brown paper bag, and drove to the John Deere plant with the same thermos and the same quiet resolve. He wasn't important in the way people talk about importance. He didn't have titles. He had reliability. In Dubuque, that counted. When I was a kid, our house smelled like motor oil and percolated coffee. My dad would sit in his chair by the window after dinner, one leg crossed over the other, watching the street like he was keeping an eye on the world. That chair wasn't fancy. Oak frame, worn armrests, a faint squeak in the back left leg that never quite went away. No matter how many times I tightened the joint, that squeak means it's still honest. He used to say, if it ever stops, something's wrong. When he got sick, the chair moved closer to the window. Hospice nurses came and went. Neighbors stopped by with casseroles they didn't know how to season. Dad sat in that chair and watched cars pull into the lot across the street, like he was waiting for someone who was late, but still expected. After he passed, I didn't know what to do with myself. Grief didn't knock. It just moved in. I brought the chair into my garage, stripped it down, sanded the arms until my hands burned, stained it walnut, and repatted the seat myself. Not because it needed fixing, but because I did it. That chair felt like proof. that someone had been here before me, that I wasn't starting from nothing. I was 49 when I met Janine. We met at a fundraiser dinner for the local food pantry. Folding chairs, lukewarm chicken, long speeches about gratitude. Janine laughed at the wrong moments, the way people do when they're nervous, but want to seem easygoing. She had kind eyes and a tired smile. Widow energy, I'd later learn. She'd been divorced twice, but she never led with that. Neither did I. I wasn't hunting for love. I was hunting for peace. Janine worked at a medical billing office. She was good with people in the way that makes them feel seen without promising too much. She told me about her son, Logan, like she was listing weather conditions. Strong-willed, complicated, sensitive underneath. I nodded and didn't pry. Logan was already grown when I came into the picture, early 30s. Big frame, bigger opinions. He never called me Dad. He called me Caleb. Sometimes just hey. I told myself that was fine. I wasn't trying to replace anyone. I was there for Janine, not to rewrite someone else's family tree. At first, things were manageable. Logan drifted in and out of jobs, warehouse work, delivery routes, a short stint at a car dealership that ended with management issues, which always meant Logan didn't like being told what to do. When money got tight, Janine would get quiet. When Janine got quiet, I'd find a way to smooth things over. A bill here, a loan just until next month, a tool from my garage he never returned. I told myself it was temporary. That kindness worked like compound interest. That if I showed up consistently, respect would eventually follow. 2 summers before everything broke, I used a chunk of my savings to redo Janine's kitchen. Not because she asked, because she looked embarrassed every time family came over. Cabinets that stuck, a faucet that leaked no matter how many washers I replaced, bad lighting that made everything feel tired. I tore it down to the studs after work. Night after night, my back ached, my hands cramped. I set tile 1 square at a time, until the grout lines were straight enough to satisfy my father's ghost. When Janine walked in and saw it finished, she cried. I didn't know anyone would do this for me, she said. I believed her. Logan looked around, nodded once, and said, "Looks expensive." That should have been my first warning. Things changed when Derek Pierce came back into Logan's life. Janine Chu always described Derek as around, but not really there when Logan was growing up. Lately, Derek had found religion, or sobriety, or just a new angle. It was hard to tell which. What I could tell was that he was confident, the kind of man who treated presence like ownership. When Derek showed up, Logan stood taller, louder, meaner. Suddenly, everything was about real dads, about blood, about who mattered. Derek bought Logan things, promised connections, told stories that painted himself as the hero. And Janine, and the woman who did her best. I stayed quiet. I'd learned a long time ago that men like Derek feed on reaction. I didn't give him any. I thought dignity was louder than volume. By the time Christmas rolled around, the air in the house felt tight, like everyone was holding something back and pretending it was fine. Janine asked if Derek could come to dinner. "It's important to Logan," she said. "So am I replied. She smiled that tight smile. The one that means, please don't make me choose. I should have heard the warning in that, because by then, the rules had already changed. I just hadn't been informed. By the time Christmas came around, I had already learned how to disappear politely. It's a skill you pick up when you love someone who hates conflict more than injustice. You stop correcting small things. You let comments slide. You take the long way around arguments because peace feels cheaper than pride. I told myself I was being mature. What I was really doing was training them to expect my silence. Janine and I got married quietly. No big church, no long guest list, just a courthouse, a lunch afterward, and a promise to be steady with each other. She moved into my ranch house at first. I wanted to keep it simple. I wanted her to feel safe. But safety, I learned, looks different to different people. After a year, she wanted to move back to her split level, closer to her sister, closer to Logan. I didn't fight it. I packed my tools, moved my clothes, and carried my father's chair into that house like it belonged. For a while, it did. Holidays happened naturally at first. Thanksgiving, Easter, a few birthdays. My chair sat at the head of the table because someone had to host, and hosting had always been my job. I cooked, I paid, I cleaned, I fixed what broke. No one thanked me out loud, but no one objected either. That's how erosion works. Logan never said thank you for anything. He said yeah and cool and whatever. When he was broke, he showed up hungry. When he had money, he vanished. Janine would ask me to be patient. He's had a hard life. She'd say, I wanted to ask whose life hadn't been hard. Instead, I nodded. There was a moment, 2 years before Christmas, that should have stopped me cold. The kitchen faucet wouldn't stop dripping. I was under the sink, tools spread out, back aching. Logan leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me struggle. That's why Mom needed a real man around. He laughed. I smiled, because I thought he meant me. Janine heard it. She didn't correct him. She didn't laugh either. She just turned back to the stove and said, "Logan, don't start. Don't start. Not don't disrespect him. Not apologize. Just don't start." I finished the repair in silence. That's when I started paying closer attention. The way conversations shifted when Derek was around. The way Logan got louder and I got quieter. The way Janine avoided my eyes when tension showed up. The way decisions got made without me, then explained afterward like updates. I wasn't being excluded loudly. I was being managed, and I let it happen. Because I believed in effort. Because my father taught me that staying power mattered. Because I thought marriages survived rough patches by leaning in, not pulling away. What I didn't understand yet was that I wasn't leaning in. I was being leaned on. The money part crept in slowly. First, it was groceries. Then, utilities. Then just this once help. When Logan's hours got cut, Janine handled the bills at her house. I never questioned it. Trust, to me, meant not checking. I kept my credit clean like it was a second spine. Paid early, never co-signed, never gambled with my name. That name meant something in Dubuque. Men at the VFU knew me as reliable. The credit union clerks knew me by face. My boss trusted me with accounts because I didn't take shortcuts. My father used to say, "Your name is the only thing you really own." I didn't realize it was being borrowed. The closer Christmas got, the more brittle everything felt. Janine kept saying she just wanted one nice night. Logan talked non-stop about Derek coming, about how important it was, about how things used to be. I heard the subtext. I wasn't part of those things. On Christmas Eve, the house was hot from the oven. Turkey smell thick in the air. Old music playing, the kind my dad used to hum without realizing it. I made coffee the way Janine liked it. Strong, plain, and set my father's chair at the head of the table out of habit, not defiance. No one stopped me, which is why the shove landed the way it did, not as an accident, as a correction, because by then, the decision had already been made. Logan just said it out loud. What I didn't know, sitting on my own floor with gravy soaking into my shirt, was that the humiliation wasn't the end of my usefulness to them. It was the signal that I'd been softened enough, that I'd been trained well enough, that my silence meant permission. I walked out that night thinking the worst thing they'd done was push me out of a chair. I was wrong. They'd already moved on to something much bigger. They'd moved on to my name. The first thing they take from you isn't your money. It's your footing. I learned that the morning after Christmas, when I woke up in my ranch house with my hips stiff, my pride bruised, and a silence so loud it felt like accusation. I stood at the sink drinking coffee that tasted wrong, no matter how I brewed it, and told myself I'd handle this like everything else. Calm, orderly, one step at a time. By 8 o'clock, that illusion was already dead. The call from the credit union was polite, almost apologetic, the kind of voice people use when they don't want to be blamed for bad news. "Mr. Monroe, we need you to come in today," the woman said. "There's an issue with a personal loan tied to your profile." "Tied how?" I asked. A pause, paper shuffling. "You're listed as a guarantor." That word hit harder than the shove. I'd never co-signed anything in my life. Not for friends, not for family, not even when my brother begged after his divorce. My name wasn't something I loaned out. By the time I pulled into the parking lot of the River Valley Community Credit Union, my hands were already steady in a way that scared me. Shock has a way of draining emotion and leaving only function behind. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed. The air smelled like copier toner and cheap coffee. A woman named Marcy met me at the desk, mid-40s, kind eyes. No nonsense. She didn't waste time. She slid a folder across the desk. There it was, a personal loan. 700 yuan, 400. Opened 8 months earlier. Borrowers, Logan Pierce. Secondary, Janine Monroe. Guarantor, Caleb Monroe. I stared at my name like it belonged to someone else. "That's not possible," I said. Marcy nodded slowly, like she'd already heard that sentence this morning. She turned her monitor toward me. "Here's the signature page." My signature was there, except it wasn't. It looked close enough to fool a machine, close enough to pass if no one cared, but it wasn't mine. The rhythm was wrong, the pressure uneven, and at the bottom, written like a punchline, was a name I hadn't used since childhood. Tommy Monroe. My father's voice echoed in my head so loud it made my ears ring. Your name is your word. Tommy, guard it. Is that yours? Marcy asked gently. No, I said. And it never was. She didn't argue. She didn't doubt me. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a form. This is a fraud affidavit, she said. If you sign it, we open an investigation. That means we can't just make it go away. I thought of Janine's tight smiles, Logan's shove, Derek's smirk. Open it, I said. My phone buzzed on the desk. Janine, Logan, Janine again. I ignored it and signed. When I walked back out into the cold, the sky over Dubuque was the color of old steel. My hip protested with every step, but I welcomed it. Pain kept me honest. The calls didn't stop. Logan left 3 voicemails before noon. First angry, then confused, then scared. They froze my account. He said in the 3rd one, I can't even buy gas. Just fix it, man. Fix it. Like this was a leaky faucet. Janine's voice came next, thin, shaking. I was trying to help him, she said. You would have said no. That was the truth she didn't realize she'd confessed. I drove to her house because part of me still believed in looking people in the eye, because part of me still wanted to believe this was salvageable if I explained it clearly enough. Logan met me in the living room like a bouncer. Ray was pacing behind him, coat still on, voice already rising. You don't do this to family. Ray barked. I'll know. Logan stepped closer. You're a guest here. Caleb, a guest who overstayed. That word again. Guest. I looked past him, at Janine. She stood in the kitchen doorway, twisting a dish towel like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Tell him whose name is on that loan, I said. She didn't speak. Logan's face, Arrogance cracked. Panic slipped through. Mom, he said. I signed it, she whispered. I thought it would be okay. Logan turned on me like I'd just pulled a trap door. You told them it was fraud, he snapped. You made my mom a criminal. I told the truth, I said. I didn't sign anything. You always cover it. He shouted. That sentence hit harder than anything else. Because he was right. I had. For years, I walked out before my temper could turn me into someone I didn't recognize. That night, I went to the VF du Post 708 instead of home. The place smelled like old beer and floor cleaner, the kind of honest place where men don't pretend things are fine when they're not. Frank Delaney was there, 72, retired attorney. The man who reads the fine print, so the rest of us don't get eaten alive. I slid the folder across the table. He didn't need long. That's not your signature, he said. No, this isn't family drama, Frank said. This is identity misuse. If you back off now, it won't stop. Next time it'll be a credit card. A mortgage. Your retirement. I don't want to destroy her, I muttered. Frank looked at me over his glasses. Wanting consequences isn't wanting destruction. But once you tell the truth, you don't get to steer the system. I went home and didn't. By morning, the rumors had already started. Texts from church friends, calls from Janine's sister, a message that said, "You're ruining Christmas. I saved everything." At noon, the investigator called. "Mr. Monroe," he said. "This is Investigator Harlan. I'm assigned to your case. I need to meet today." The word case felt heavy, like something had crossed a line it couldn't uncross. And that was when the false hope crept in. The quiet voice in my head that said, maybe this will scare them straight. Maybe Janine will fix it. Maybe Logan will apologize. Maybe you can still walk this back. I held on to that hope, like a man holding a cracked rung on a ladder. I didn't realize yet that it was already breaking. Investigator Harlan didn't look like a man who enjoyed ruining people's lives. That made it worse. He met me in a small conference room at the credit union. Beige walls, a recorder on the table, a legal pad already filled with notes. "Mr. Monroe," he said calmly, "I need you to walk me through the timeline, from the moment you believe your identity was misused." So I did. Christmas Eve, the shove, the credit alert, the loan, the signature. I kept my voice even, gave facts, names, dates. Harlan asked me to sign my name 10 times on blank paper. I wrote Caleb Monroe the way I always had. Did, practiced, consistent. He compared it to the loan file and didn't pretend it was close. "This will go to the county attorney," he said. "That doesn't guarantee charges, but it could." Against who? I asked, already knowing. He didn't answer directly. Be prepared for this to get uncomfortable, he said instead. Uncomfortable was an understatement. By the end of the week, everyone knew, not the details, not the truth, just the headline version. Local man files fraud claim against wife and stepson. Christmas dispute turns legal. Family conflict escalates. At church, people smiled too hard. Conversation stopped when I walked into the fellowship hall. A man I'd known for 20 years clapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hope you boys work it out." Like this was a spat over lawn equipment. Janine moved like a ghost. She stayed with her sister for a few nights. When she came home to grab clothes, she didn't speak, just walked room to room, like she was inventorying what she might lose. Logan oscillated between rage and pleading. One minute it was, you didn't have to do this. The next, just tell them it was a misunderstanding. Then, I swear I'll pay you back. Ray called once. He didn't threaten. He laughed. You think paperwork makes you tough? He said. You just embarrassed yourself. No one's gonna side with you. I hung up without answering. The letter from the county arrived on January 9th. Lynn County seal, courtroom number, date and time. Hearing regarding fraudulent signature and financial responsibilities. I sat at my kitchen table staring at it until the coffee went cold. That was the night I almost folded. I won't lie about that. I sat there thinking about how easy it would be to call Marcy at the credit union and say I'd changed my mind, to tell Harlan I didn't want to proceed, to swallow the debt, make payments quietly, and let everyone pretend this never happened. I could afford it. Barely, but I could. I imagined Janine relieved. Logan, smug but quiet. Church going back to normal. No more looks, no more whispers. Peace, the kind of peace you buy by erasing yourself. I picked up my phone. Then I remembered the floor, the gravy, Janine wiping wood instead of helping me up. I put the phone down. The courthouse smelled like old limestone and metal detectors. 100 years of fear soaked into the walls. Logan paced in a suit that didn't fit his attitude. Ray stood beside him, arms crossed, still smug. Janine sat alone on the bench, eyes red, hands clenched together like prayer might save her. She reached for my sleeve when she saw me. "Caleb, please," she whispered. "I'll make payments. I'll sell things. Just tell them it was a misunderstanding." I looked at her and felt that old reflex to protect rise up again. Then I remembered she hadn't protected me. "I'm not doing this to Logan," I said quietly. "I'm doing this for my name." The bailiff called our case. The judge was a woman with silver hair pulled tight and eyes that didn't miss much. "Mr. Monroe," she said, "you're contesting a guarantor signature on a personal loan. You claim your identity was used without consent." "Yes, Your Honor." Logan's attorney stood. "Your Honor, this is a family misunderstanding." Mrs. Monroe believed she had permission. The judge raised a hand. "Belief is not consent. Do you have proof?" The attorney hesitated. "No written proof." "Your Honor." The judge turned to Logan. "Mr. Pierce, did Mr. Monroe agree to co-sign this loan?" Logan glanced at Ray. The judge's voice sharpened. "That's not my question." Logan swallowed. Not directly," Marcy testified. Harlan testified. Then it was my turn. Logan's attorney tried one last angle. "Mr. Monroe, isn't this really about a Christmas argument?" The room leaned in. "There was an argument," I said, "and a shove. But I'm here because my name was used to take a loan I never agreed to." The judge nodded once. "Do you have evidence regarding intent?" "I do." I handed the bailiff a flash drive. "Audio from my Warbell camera," I said. "Outside Mrs. Monroe's home on Christmas Eve." Logan's head snapped up. "What?" he blurted. The audio played. Wind, a door closing. Then Logan's voice, laughing. The old man's too weak to do anything. Ray's voice followed. "He'll pay it like he always does." Then Logan, again, bright and cruel. "He's just maintenance." The courtroom went silent. Not dramatic silence, real silence. The kind where even breathing feels loud. Janine covered her mouth. Logan's face drained. Ray looked around like volume might save him. "That's sufficient," the judge said, clicking the file shut. "This shows intent." She looked at Janine. "Mrs. Monroe, this matter will be referred appropriately. There will be consequences." When we walked out into the cold, my legs felt weak, not from fear, from relief. But relief didn't feel like victory. It felt like standing in the wreckage after a storm, realizing the house you lived in is gone. The town moved on quickly. That's what towns do. Snow piled along the curbs. People went back to buying milk. and complaining about the weather. My world didn't. Janine cried at night. Logan blamed me for everything he lost. Ray disappeared when noise stopped working. I went home to my quiet ranch house and sat alone with the consequences. I had told the truth, and for a while, that felt like losing everything. There's a moment in every long collapse when the noise finally stops. Not because things are better, but because the machinery has taken over. After the hearing, I didn't have to do much of anything. That was the strange part. For years, I'd been the man who fixed things. Patched, paid, apologized, smoothed. Now, all I had to do was stand still and let the process do what it was built to do. The county attorney's office called 3 days later. "Mr. Monroe," the woman said, voice professional. "Murdouble, we're moving forward." She didn't say against your wife. She didn't say against your stepson. She said forward. That word carried weight. Janine hired a lawyer, a quiet man with careful shoes and a habit of speaking like every sentence might be recorded. He asked for a meeting to explore options. We met in a neutral office downtown. Frosted glass, a plant that looked like it had never been watered properly. Janine sat across from me, shoulders curled inward, hands clasped so tight, her knuckles were white. She wouldn't look at me. "Caleb," her lawyer began. "My client acknowledges mistakes were made. She's prepared to cooperate fully, make restitution, and request leniency. Mistakes. Like this had been a misfiled form." I waited. The lawyer cleared his throat. "We're hoping you'd be willing to submit a statement emphasizing reconciliation. That could help." "Help who?" Janine finally looked up. Her eyes were swollen, tired, afraid. "I never wanted this," she said. "I just wanted to keep my son from drowning. You pushed my head under to do it," I replied. The lawyer flinched. "Caleb," Janine whispered, "I'll do whatever you want. Counseling, separation. I'll sell my jewelry. I'll sign whatever you need." I took a breath and felt how calm I was. This wasn't revenge. This was clarity. "I don't want anything from you," I said. "I want the truth to be told, completely, without cushioning." Her lawyer started to speak. "No," I continued. "Sure. Character letters. No minimizing language. No pretending this was confusion or love or panic. It was a decision." Janine broke then, quietly. The kind of crying that doesn't ask for forgiveness, only survival. "I can't protect Logan anymore," she said. That was the most honest thing she'd said in years. Logan's meeting came next. He didn't bring a lawyer at first. He came alone to my house like he used to when he wanted something. Hoodie, hands shoved in his pockets, anger covering fear like cheap paint. "You happy now?" he snapped. "You ruined everything." I gestured to the chair across from me. He didn't sit. "You could have just paid it," he said. "You had the money." "Yes," I replied. "And you had my name." He laughed bitterly. "You always act like your name is sacred." "It is," I said. "It's the only thing I built that no one else could take. Unless I let them." His jaw tightened. "Ray said you'd do this? Said you'd play the victim?" "Ray isn't here," I said. "And you don't get to outsource your choices anymore." Logan's voice dropped. "They're talking charges." "Yes." "For Mom too." "Yes." He finally looked scared. "You don't understand how this works," he said. "They don't care why. They just crush people." "I know," I said. "I stopped cushioning you from that reality." He stood there for a long moment, then said something small. "I didn't think you'd actually go through with it." Neither did I. That was the truth. But once I did, I didn't look back. Ray tried once more. He showed up at the VFW, loud and confident, telling anyone who'd listen that I was a traitor, that I'd sold out family to save face. Frank Delaney shut him down with 3 sentences and a stare. "Ray," Frank said, "the only people who talk like that are the ones who've never signed their own name to anything worth protecting." Ray didn't come back. The plea negotiations moved faster than I expected. Janine cooperated fully, provided emails, texts, signed statements. She didn't fight the facts. She didn't try to shift blame. That mattered. Logan tried to minimize, tried to argue intent, tried to say I'd implicitly agreed because I'd paid before. That argument died the moment the audio transcript hit the file. "He's just maintenance." The county attorney didn't raise her voice when she read it. She didn't have to. In the courtroom, months later, I sat in the back row and watched the final act unfold. Like a machine completing its cycle, Janine pled to financial identity misuse. No jail time. Mandatory restitution. Mandatory counseling. A formal record that would follow her everywhere. She cried when the judge spoke, not loudly, not dramatically, just enough to sound like someone who finally understood the cost of silence. Logan's turn was different. The judge looked at him for a long moment before speaking. "Mr. Pierce," she said, "you displayed a pattern of entitlement, deception, and expectation that another person would absorb your consequences." Logan stared straight ahead. "You referred to Mr. Billard." "Monroe is maintenance," she continued. "The court finds that language revealing. The sentence wasn't long, but it was permanent enough to matter. When it was over, Logan finally looked at me, not with anger, with something like disbelief, as if he'd just realized that I wasn't weak. I'd just been done. Outside the courthouse, the cold air felt clean, honest. Frank clapped me on the shoulder. "You okay?" he asked. "I am," I said, and meant it. Janine didn't come with me when I left. We finalized the separation quietly weeks later. No screaming, just signatures and space. The house felt different after that. Not empty, accurate. One afternoon, Frank went with me to retrieve my father's chair. Logan wasn't there. Ray was gone for good. Janine stood back while I ran my hand along the worn armrest. The wood was smooth, familiar. I loaded it into my truck and drove home slowly. That night, I made coffee and sat by the window, the chair squeaking softly like it always had. For the first time in years, the silence didn't feel like erasure. It felt like peace earned. Time doesn't heal things the way people like to pretend it does. It just reveals what's still standing after. Poor. As fades. Spring came late to Dubuque that year. Snow melted into gray slush along the curbs, and the river ran high and brown, carrying things away whether they were ready or not. The town moved on, the way towns always do. New gossip, new grievances, new people to quietly judge. My name stopped coming up. That was the first gift. Janine moved into a small apartment near her sister's place. Nothing dramatic, just quieter. She took the counseling seriously. I know because her lawyer stopped calling, and the restitution payments arrived on time every month without a single excuse attached. She wrote me one letter, not to ask for forgiveness, not to explain, just to say she finally understood what silence costs. I didn't write back, not because I hated her, because some chapters don't need footnotes. Logan disappeared for a while after sentencing. Last I heard, he took a job 2 counties over, warehouse work on night shifts. The truck was gone. The swagger went with it. His bank account stayed restricted, longer than he expected, and the background check that followed him around closed more doors than it opened. People like to believe consequences teach lessons. They don't. They just narrow options. Logan sent me a text once, months later. "I didn't think you'd actually do it." I stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "Neither did I. Until you forced my hand." That was the last message we exchanged. Ray never contacted me again. Men like him don't apologize. They relocate their narratives somewhere else. He's probably telling a version of the story where he's the victim of a system that sides with paperwork over people. That tells you everything you need to know. As for me, life got smaller and better. I went back to routines that didn't require permission. Morning coffee by the window, walks that let my hip warm up slowly, evenings at the VFW, where nobody asked questions they didn't want honest answers to. Frank Delaney still read the paper, like the world made sense if you looked closely enough. We talked about nothing and everything. Politics, weather, the way men mistake generosity for weakness, and then act surprised when the math changes. One afternoon, I refinished the baseboard in my living room, just because it bothered me that it wasn't straight. No one praised me. No one benefited from it. That felt right. The chair stayed by the window. My father's chair. It squeaked the same way it always had. That little back-left protest, like it wanted you to know it was still alive. Some nights, I'd sit there and watch headlights pass, remembering how he used to do the same thing. Waiting, not for someone specific, but for the idea that if you stayed put long enough, things would settle. I used to think strength meant absorbing blows without complaint. I don't anymore. Strength is knowing when absorption turns into erasure. I didn't win. Winning implies celebration. Enemies routed, flags planted. What I did was stop losing quietly. I kept my name. I kept my footing. I kept the ability to sit in my own house without feeling like a guest in my own life. Sometimes, late at night, I replay that moment at the table, the shove, the silence. Janine wiping the floor like I was the inconvenience. Not with anger, with clarity. That was the moment the truth said itself out loud. Everything that followed was just paperwork catching up. If there's a lesson in all of this, it isn't about law or credit or even family. It's simpler than that. If someone treats your dignity like a renewable resource, stop supplying it. If they confuse your kindness for weakness, correct the math. And if they tell you to know your place, believe them, then choose a better one. I still live in Dubuque. Same streets, same river, same winters that don't care about your plans. But when I sit by the window now, the silence isn't the kind that swallows you. It's the kind that holds.